Steam rose from the ocean in wavering curtains, veiling the horizon the way fever clouds blur a patient's eyes. Where waves once rolled, curtains of heat now hissed and popped, sending plumes of salted vapor higher than any gull could fly. In the middle of that simmering wasteland drifted a white monolith, cold and crackling, an impossible survivor in a world gone too hot. It was called the Eighth Ark, though no scripture blessed it, only the stubborn hope of the refugees who had carved their lives into its belly. Lyra crawled along an ice tunnel, lit by strings of scavenged LEDs. Frost kissed her eyelashes, and beneath her gloves she felt the grain of ancient snow. Wind moaned through stress fractures overhead, the sound of a glacier's slow dying. She liked the noise. It reminded her that the berg was still colder than the ocean below. As long as the ice complained, they were alive. She reached the valve room, a hollowed cavity where copper pipes channeled meltwater into condenser tanks. Her brother, Malik, waited, tightening a bolt with hands too big for his teenage body. An engineer's harness hung loose around his shoulders. "You're late," he said, voice echoing. "I was on lookout." Lyra passed him a filter cartridge. "No sign of flayers yet." Malik's jaw stiffened at the name. The flayers, pirates who prowled the Boil in armored steamships, stripped bergs of ice and people. They left skeleton hulls bobbing on the glare, like so many bleached bones. "We still have to fix the overflow valve," he murmured. "Condenser 6 is flooding. If we lose drainage, interior storms will hit before nightfall." Lyra knelt beside him. The overflow valve was rimed with ice, but a spider crack laced the brass body. Meltwater dripped with a slow, sinister rhythm. Every liter of lost water became rising steam the minute it touched the sea below. Every wisp of extra vapor inside the berg became weather, howling blizzards or hail bursts chewing through corridors. Refugees feared those internal storms almost as much as pirates. The berg could attack from within. They swapped the valve in silence, the way only siblings who had shared both womb and wartime could. When the last seal locked, Malik exhaled. "That buys us a day," he said. Outside the pressure hatch, the communal artery curved toward Central Agora. Voices mingled with the crackle of ice. Markets bustled. Children chased each other near hydroponic racks that glowed emerald beneath ultraviolet lamps. If one ignored the occasional groan of shifting shelves or the boom of distant calving, the Eighth Ark looked almost like a normal town. Lyra and Malik climbed an access shaft to the observatory dome, an acrylic bubble above the berg's crown. There they found Captain Isabel, wrapped in a parka, tattered by more winters than Lyra had lived. Isabel studied the horizon through a battered sextant, then logged a bearing on her slate. "You're just in time for bad news," she said without looking up. "Flayers spotted. 45 clicks east. 4 ships at least." "Could be a patrol," Malik offered. "Could be," Isabel agreed. "But a patrol smells our plume and calls in artillery. These ones are setting nets. They want to capture, not sink." The captain pointed to a wavering smear in the steam field. Engine smoke, darker than the surrounding vapor, rose in thick strands. Lyra felt her stomach drop. "How long until contact?" "At current drift, 8 hours, Isabel said. "Less if the wind shifts." "Engines?" Malik asked, but the captain only shook her head. The berg carried no propellers. The refugees relied on the natural gradient between cold berg and boiling sea. As ice melted, pockets of chilled water sank, creating its own propulsion. Slow but silent. Installing a motor meant exhaust heat and vibration, which speeded melt and advertised their location. Ice had to hide to survive. Isabel handed Lyra a coil of fiber wire. "Get the net teams ready. We'll mask the exterior with fresh snow and deploy mirror kites. If we look like broken fragments, maybe they pass." Malik saluted. Lyra nodded. Both hurried beneath the skin of their floating world. The net teams worked near the berg's waterline, where the air tasted of salt and sulfur. Lyra clipped herself to an anchor spike and rappelled down the gleaming cliff. Steam clawed at her cheeks, instantly condensing and freezing against the slope. A terrible irony of the boil. The hotter the sea, the colder the ice surface, as endothermic melt robbed the berg's core of warmth. Below, Vasca the rigger secured reflective mylar strips across a newly calved face. "Flares again?" she shouted over the hiss of vapor. "4 ships, Lyra confirmed. Vasca spat, the glob sizzling as it vanished between them. "Pirates'll drink us like noon tea if they hook on. That's why we work fast." They pulled lines, unfurled sheets like silver wings, and hammered salvage nails until their arms burned. Mylar would scatter lidar pulses and warp visual silhouettes, hopefully tricking marauders into thinking the berg was loose rubble not worth boarding. Hours bled away. Somewhere inside the berg, the council broadcast a prayer through rusted speakers. "May the cold hold, may the steam blind, may the outsiders lose their way." Lyra mouthed the words between strokes of her mallet. By late afternoon, cumulative fatigue weighed on her limbs, but the job was done. She climbed back to the dome, expecting a reprieve. Instead, she found alarm lights strobing. Malik met her at the hatch, breathless. "Internal pressure spike," he said. "Condenser 6 again. The valve held, but the drain channel below collapsed. Pocket storm forming in the east corridors." "Can't we vent it?" "Not without exposing the hull. If we cut a vent, steam will plume like a flare, and the pirates will home right in." A choice. Risk detection, or risk being ripped apart from inside. Captain Isabel appeared, expression carved in glacier stone. "I need volunteers to stabilize the pocket manually," she said. "We freeze it out." Freeze it out. Classic but brutal. Pump CO2 canisters into the affected chambers, rapidly cooling the air until moisture snowed out. It worked, but caught any crew inside like flies in amber if they miscalculated. Lyra stepped forward. So did Malik. Neither could let the other go alone. The captain led them to the armory for winter rigs, reinforced exosuits with chilled plating. They strapped CO2 tanks on their backs and donned helmets whose visors were pitted from previous storms. "Get in. Get out," Isabel instructed. "No hero laps." The breach zone lay 3 decks below. On the march, they passed evacuees dragging bundles toward safer sectors. Bundled infants wailed. Elders muttered old country lullabies. The heartbeat of fear bounced through pipes and walls. The eastern corridors were ghostly quiet. Frost had already begun drifting in midair, forming delicate needles that sparkled in their headlamps. The pocket storm was still gestating, but slabs of ice had peeled from ceilings, revealing brine channels that pulsed like blue veins. Malik deployed a remote sensor. "Supersat," he muttered. Temperature rose sharply ahead. "We've got 20 meters path before the core vortex." They wedged shut every side hall with glacial mulch, sealing off potential spread. Then Lyra cracked her CO2 valve. A hiss, white fog, and the world shrank to a bead of frost swirling around her visor. She advanced, sweeping the nozzle like a lance. Heat met cold. Crystals fell like ash. The storm, seeking equilibrium, coughed sheets of wind down the corridor. Lyra braced, magnetic grips in her boots locking to the ice floor. Malik mirrored her on the opposite wall, doubling suppression. At the vortex core lay the collapsed drainage shaft, a gaping maw glowing with geothermal light. Steam avalanched upward. No wonder. The berg had melted through to a submerged lava vent, one of the fissures that had turned the ocean into a cauldron. They'd anchored over hell itself. "Can't freeze that," Malik said. "We redirect," Lyra replied. Inspiration struck like lightning. "We build a chimney." She sketched a quick plan on her visor HUD, piping residual steam through abandoned fracture tubes out the top spire. It would vent, yes, but high above, where vapor already cloaked them. The risk of detection was lower than spewing at flank level. Malik slapped her shoulder. "Let's carve a path." They synchronized their suit lasers at minimal melt settings, cutting slits into flanking ice walls. Steam blasted in their faces, but CO2 kept temperatures bearable. By interconnecting cavities, they berthed a slender tunnel that angled upward. When the passage was ready, Malik released a cargo balloon. Salvaged weather foil, inflated with lighter-than-air nitrogen. The balloon sailed into the new chimney, drawing the steam behind it like a seductive ghost toward open sky. Pressure dropped. The vortex sighed, relaxing its claws. Frost settled where chaos had reigned. They retreated, exhausted. The storm dispersed, leaving sparkling drifts across the corridor. It resembled fresh snowfall. For one heartbeat, Lyra forgot the apocalypse outside and remembered winter days of her childhood, when snow meant play instead of peril. Back in Central Agora, cheers greeted them. Yet no celebration lasted long on the 8th Arc. A lookout burst through, face blanched. Flares closing. 5 kilometers. 5, not 45. Either currents favored the pirates, or their ships had gullets of coal enough to chase down miracles. The council convened. Isabel addressed the gathered throng from a platform of ice crates. "We can't outrun steamships," she said, "and we can't let them board. They'll butcher the healthy and enslave the rest." Silence. "There is one option. Break the berg." Gasps fluttered around. The captain continued. "We split into shards. Each section carries a portion of our people. Smaller targets, harder to harpoon. We rendezvous at Glacier Graveyard once the pirates pass." Splitting meant using explosive charges to sever natural fault lines. The operation was designed as a last resort if structural failure threatened. Now it would become a tactical maneuver. "We practiced this," Isabel reminded them. "Section leaders, to your posts. You have 30 minutes. The Ark shuddered with sudden activity. Families rushed to assigned shards: North Fang, Starboard Cradle, Lantern Tail. Lyra's group, Engine Shard, included technical crews and condenser plants, essential for survival. As she and Malik sprinted toward their zone, elders pressed faith tokens into their palms. Chips of pre-boil earth, tiny statues of ice saints, folded prayers written in blood ink. The weight of entire histories seemed to lodge in Lyra's chest. They reached the fault gallery, a cathedral-sized cavern, where fissures webbed the floor like lightning frozen in ice. Explosive charges had already been drilled, wires snaking to a central trigger board. Vasca manned the board, eyes wide but steady. "Good timing," she barked. 2 pirates visible through thermal. Let's make them choose which ghost to chase. Shards were numbered. Engine shard corresponded to segment 4. Lyra secured her crew inside reinforced pods. They'd ride the calving event as passengers inside sealed spheres, then emerged to manage stabilizers. Malik performed a last sweep of condenser locks. "Pressure optimal," he said. "All pods buckled?" Vasca asked. Green lights. She started the countdown. 10. The berg groaned, a preemptive wail. 9. Somewhere above, harpoon cannon thundered. Ice splintered. The flares had begun. 8. "Hold," Vasca whispered, though no one thought of moving. 7. 6. 5. Impact jolted the cavern. A hook pierced ceiling ice, tearing a slab away. Heat flooded in. Sea spray, near boiling, fountained through the breach, hissing on contact with frost. 4. Detonating early. Vasca slammed her palm on the manual override. 3. Became 0 in a blossom of thunder. Charges ruptured the fault lines. The world folded sideways. Lyra's stomach soared as the cavern tore free. She glimpsed other shards cracking apart, each with its own bouquet of spray and flecks of starlight. Her pod slammed shut. Darkness. Then, acceleration downward, a stomach-sucking plunge. The new iceberg fragment hit the boiling ocean with a seismic roar. Heat convulsed the surface. Steam engulfed everything. The pod's shock absorbers screamed. Lyra feared they'd rupture. Moments later, buoyancy steadied. Pods popped open. Steam swirl parted, revealing a sky turned gold by late sun and the pall of volcanic haze. Around them drifted other shards, some still shedding ice waterfalls. Pirate ships loomed, black silhouettes trailing scalding wakes. Segment 4 maintained maybe 50 meters of beam, small compared to the Motherberg, but still a tempting prize. Lyra scrambled out, gathering her crew onto the makeshift deck. "Deploy mirror kites," she shouted. They launched foil kites tethered to the shard, creating a mirage of floating debris that refracted sunlight. One pirate ship veered toward the larger shard one, lured by its imposing mass. Another angled at them, engines chugging. Cannon fire erupted. Chunks of ice geysered up. Lyra flinched as splinters whizzed by. They had no artillery, only the berg's inherent defenses: cold, unpredictability, and the willingness to die before surrender. Malik sprinted to the condenser vents. Inspiration lit his face. "Remember the chimney?" he called. "Yes." "We can weaponize it." He rigged a conduit from the condenser's pressurized CO2 reserves, straight to the surface fissure. "Super cool the waterline," he explained. "Flash freeze the sea. Their hull sticks, or at least their boilers crack from thermal shock." They had minutes before boarding hooks landed. Lyra and 2 others cranked the valve to max. CO2 screamed out, splashing into the cauldron below. Instantly, fog erupted. The surrounding sea flashed into slush, an impossible phenomenon amid the boil. But under high pressure and localized cold, physics still respected zeal. The pirate vessel plowed into the sudden gum of ice slurry. Its prow lurched, momentum died. Engines howled, crew shouted. Another broadside missed wide. Malik whooped. "We stalled them!" But the victory was temporary. Boilers belched, and the ship began carving free. Lyra scanned the deck for further advantage. She saw the harpoon chain embedded in their shard, a thick steel link connecting them to the pirate's winch. They could sever it, but why waste the opportunity? "Reverse pull," she whispered. They rerouted condenser pumps, directing all meltwater to flood the shard's outer flank. Mass shifted. The iceberg began to roll gently starboard. The harpoon chain tightened, dragging the pirate's bow sideways against the ice slurry. Metal groaned. "More!" Malik yelled. The shard tilted further. Refugees clung to railings. At 20-degree list, the chain's tension peaked. A final shriek rang out, and the pirate hull tore along the waterline as though peeled by a Titan's can opener. Superheated water gushed into the breach. Steam explosions rocked the vessel. Fire erupted within. Seconds later, its boilers detonated in a glory of sparks, echoing across the fog. Cheers rose from the shard, mingled with sobs of disbelief. One enemy down. Others remained, but confusion spread among the fleet. Destroying an iceberg fragment should have been easy. Losing a ship shattered that certainty. Night descended, bringing cooler air that strengthened the refugees' natural defenses. The remaining flayers circled warily, then pulled back to regroup. By dawn, only plumes of distant smoke marked their retreat. Segment 4 rendezvoused with its sibling shards at Glacier Graveyard, a stretch of sea littered with ancient berg fragments, each the size of cathedrals. There, under the skeletal arches of frozen ruins, the Eighth Ark reassembled. Not all shards returned. Lantern Tail was missing, and Starboard Cradle arrived riddled with harpoon scars, but enough survived to rebuild. In the council chamber, carved anew, Captain Isabel addressed the weary crowd. We lost people, but we live. We carry their stories forward. The boil still burns. The pirates still hunt. The storms still rise. Yet we remain colder than the world around us, and that is our strength. Applause, subdued but sincere, rippled through the cavern. Later, Lyra and Malik stood on the berg's rim watching sunrise bleed through steam, painting the sky with bands of copper and rose. The ocean hissed, relentless, but the berg beneath them crackled back in defiance. A fragile equilibrium. Fire below, ice above. Humanity balanced at the hinge. Malek nudged his sister. Think the world will ever cool again? Maybe not our world, Lyra answered, but maybe one will carve from this one. She imagined future shards drifting, unchased, under calm skies that rained real water instead of boiling spray. A fantasy, perhaps, but fantasy was their furnace, burning without heat, melting no ice. It drove them onward across a murderous ocean, inside a hollowed miracle that still floated, still shielded a few thousand heartbeats from extinction. And as long as the ice groaned, they would listen, heeding its warnings, drawing strength from its perseverance, learning the language of survival spelled out in creaks and splinters. For in every fracture lay the promise of another shard, another chance, and the stubborn refusal to surrender cold to fire.